So here's proof in the pudding on how devastating the washing line rig can be in the right situation. This one's £32, real nice scaly one. So I'll get it slipped back and I'll talk you through exactly how and why I use the washing line rig. This year, the washing line tactic for me has been a go-to sort of method for when I'm fishing in the edge, because you don't always want to set up right over the top of the fish, or sometimes you can't sort of get rods into where they're actually feeding. So yeah, for me, it's definitely the one. I don't always use it. Like I say, if they're just in the edge in front of me, then I can set up there, set well back, and just drop a couple of traps in the edge. But when I need to, it's definitely the one for fishing the far banks. Like, I've got a load of reeds behind me here, and obviously you can't fish around there. So yeah, it's definitely a killer method in this situation. For me, the washing line method is so effective purely down to the fact you've got no line traipsing across the swim. Like, this is the perfect example. I've got about 6 foot on the far bank, which is where I'm fishing, and then it drops down into about 14 foot of water. So I don't want line trailing from here all the way to the spot, potentially fish bumping into it and spooking out of the area. So fishing the washing line, none of the lines in the water, only a bit by the rig, and there's loads of putty up the line as well, so everything's pinned down to the deck, being as inconspicuous as possible. I'm so confident when I'm fishing the washing line rig, purely down to the fact of if any fish comes into the swim, there's going to be no danger what they know of, and they're going to feed freely on the baited area, and it gives me a maximum chance of one of them picking up the hook bait. The way that I go about setting up my washing line rig is fairly simple, but it needs to be done correctly so it's safe for the fish as well. So what I'll do is I'll get a bare lead on the rod and I'll cast it beyond this spot and onto the far bank. Once I'm sure the lead is firmly in place on the far bank, I'll put the rod on the rest and have it nice and tight to the lead so no line is touching the water whatsoever. But what I'll do first is I'll slacken off the clutch ever so slightly, just so when I walk around there and get the rig out, I can still take line if I need to. Next up, I get everything I need for dropping the rig. So I'll have my rig hook bait already on, and I normally put a little PVA stick on it just to protect the point as it's falling through the water. I also carry my baiting pole with me if I need it, and a bucket of bait as well. Once I get round to the swim, then got to dig the lead out, find it, and then clip on the rig via a quick change swivel with a little anti-tangle sleeve over the top to keep everything nice and neat. I then get some bait out of my bucket, put it into the spoon on the baiting pole, and then lay my rig on top nicely, and it's ready to go out there. So next up is probably the trickiest part of the whole thing, and that's shipping the pole out. What I have to do, obviously ensuring that I don't tip it out just anywhere, ship it out to the spot, but constantly gaining line off of the clutch as well until you get it out to where you need to be. And then basically I pull one arm well back, and as I tip the pole over to deposit the rig and the bait onto the spot, I follow it down with my arm, and basically that just means the rig will land nice and straight and it will kick away lovely from the lead as well. Once the rig's in place, this is the important part, is getting your line lay right. So I have a big storm pole in the edge with a rubber band around the top of it, and basically what I'll do, I will lift a few of the strands of the rubber band up and slide a loop of line underneath that, and then I'll just rip off a little bit of a reed or something like that and just wedge it in that loop, pull it down nice and tight, ensuring everything's slack down to your rig so there's no line trailing through the swim up in the water. And then once that's complete, head back round to the swim, tighten up the clutch, and lift all that line back out of the water again, and then we're fishing. Finally, when I'm back in the swim, getting everything set up, basically I have the rod pointing directly to where I'm fishing. I also have the rod tip fairly high in the air. This just means it keeps the line well out of the water's way. If you've got a big crosswind like I have today, you do occasionally get a bow in it, and obviously you don't want it to hit the water's surface. Lastly, I make sure I've got a really heavy bobbin on as well, so as soon as that pings out of that elastic band, I get a savage drop back, and yeah, hopefully it'll be fish on. My go-to mix when I'm fishing in the edge or washing line in general is pretty simple. I start with a mixture size of pellet. So I normally use 6mm and 8mm. I don't want them grubbing around for absolutely ages on an area, making them difficult to catch. So I choose the bigger pellet purely because it makes them easier to catch really. And then I'll put 15mm tuna, a few whole ones in, and I'll chop a few in half as well. Always been a massive fan of chop baits. And then I'll put some 10mm tuna in with it as well. Finishing it off, a bit of liquid food. My go-to is normally the hot chorizo or even the liquid squid as well. So there is times when I wouldn't use the washing line rig, and there's a couple of things I take into consideration. If there's any snags near the spot, probably wouldn't use it then, purely down to fish safety, because you do get that moment of slack when the fish picks up the rig and obviously it pings out of whatever you've got it clipped to on the far bank. So there is a potential of the fish making its way into the snag. So that's a no from me. The other thing that I take into consideration is the bird life on the lake. At the minute, the lake that I'm currently fishing, we've got a group of swans and they've got young and they're currently teaching them to fly, which can be a right nuisance. And obviously you don't want a washing line rig going through their flight training path, if you like, because it's just going to end up in a massive mess, and yeah, can't be dealing with that. So just take everything into consideration, everything that you can think that could possibly go wrong, just think about it and then you'll be fishing safely.